Hi, it's Amy and Tim from Go With Less, and in today's video we are going to address why we implemented a budget in the middle of our vacation, our 9-week trip around Europe. I am surprised that we haven't had comments about this sounds crappy. Why would anybody do this?
Yeah. We're on the third phase of our trip, which is a house sit. We're actually in France right now, in the backyard of the house sit. And so why we implemented this budget a few weeks or about midway into our trip was because we found that our spending was not out of control. As a matter of fact, Amy had done a lot of legwork before we left the States to make sure that we were going to have some things in place. We were going to know what public transportation was like. She'd found restaurants that were going to be affordable. So we had some things in place to keep our spending in control. However, we found ourselves still spending more money than we would like to have been spending while we're here. And so about a month into our trip, we implemented a $40 a day budget. And now that we're on the house sit, we don't need that same kind of granularity, and we're at $250 a week. And the reason for that is the $40 a day was around each of the cities that we were going to. We met something new that was just different. And so the reason we don't have a budget when we're back in Denver, don't know if I mentioned that before or not. However, the reason we don't have a budget, okay. Back in Denver, we do not keep a budget, and the reason for that is because we have a very controlled situation in Denver. We know what our spending is going to look like. We've tracked it for eons, and we know what things are going to cost, and so we have some controls in place that make it so.
We know what our health club costs. We know how much our groceries cost generally.
Our gas
we have a stocked
costs,
pantry, so we buy things when they're on sale, and we have a stocked freezer. So if it's kind of an expensive week for sales in the grocery store, then we have a full pantry to lean on if we need to. If it's
so we have it dialed in basically. Here in Europe,
we don't have it dialed in.
We don't have it dialed in.
It's new.
It's new, and every day it's new. Especially in the early phase of our trip, it was very new. We were in a different city or a different country,
and still are.
And so that's exactly right. So it was a challenge to keep our spending under control. So we had to implement this budget idea to get ourselves back in check, our own personal check, where we wanted to be.
Yeah. And I think what makes it a little tricky is that this is our first time, and we have visited 11 cities. We've been in Europe many times, but this was our first time. We picked cities that we have never visited, so 11 new cities. And so what happened is in every city we kind of paid to do not everything, but it's like dusk and we're having little bugs. Apologies. Anyway, we wanted to kind of do everything, so we already knew as we're there that we can't do everything, so we were actually quite mindful of that. And for example, we took 12 or 13 free walking tours. Well, free walking tours still has a gratuity for the tour guide on every single one of those, and when you do tour 12 or 13 with 2 people, that was a sizable chunk. So and that would have been one of 2 or 3 activities that day, many with entrance fees and charges. So it all added up. Yeah,
and something else, I think we're coming at this not with a we unfortunately early on, I think we were in a vacation mindset sort of mode. And so what that meant is that we would say to ourselves, well, we're not going to do this again.
We
may never be here again. And so this is something we really need to spend this extra 10 or 15 euro to do this thing that you might never be able to do again. And so for us, and maybe that would be good wisdom if you're only traveling 2 weeks a year and you are indeed never going to be back at some place, then maybe that's good wisdom to use for your vacation that you're going to have once a year. We hope that this is a part of our extended lifestyle, and so if we made that decision on a daily basis, then we're easily going to be blowing our budget, and we can't continue to do what we want to do, which is travel the world as inexpensively as we possibly can.
Yeah, so now what we're tasked with is finding where the splurges make sense. So we did our budget, so on the 6th city was Munich. So we'd already been through 5 huge cities. They got almost more expensive as we continued. And so we were getting into Munich. I looked at I track every single penny we spend on vacation. Tim does it at home. I do it on vacation. It happened without even a conversation, which is kind of strange. But anyway, so I track our budget every single day and notice oh wow, our per day spending, we are spending a lot of money on all of these things because we're doing kind of everything. We're going out to eat with restaurants that have servers versus kind of quicker, more casual places. We didn't do tons of it, but it didn't take a ton to make a big dent in our budget. So what we decided to do when we hit Munich, maybe 3 weeks ago, was implementing a $40 a day US dollars for the couple of like not things that we'd already spent. So like our hotel was already taken care of. Like if we had already booked a tour, that was already good. We're talking about, it was mostly like food and day of like what are we doing today? And we had $40, and so we did come in right exactly where we needed to, but we did have to be very careful about like, is this something that we, so there are several things during our trip that we're like, we didn't need to spend the money. And so I don't looking back, there's several things that we didn't do. So even though we say we were kind of out of our budget, we were still really careful. Yeah. So anyone else looking at us, not anyone, but most other people looking at us might say like, wow, you're really cheap, and how could you possibly, like, that doesn't sound any fun. And so we get it.
We've had an amazing time.
Yeah,
and
but
our
we did have a
frugality,
great
so we've actually talked about this quite a bit amongst ourselves anyway, about frugality and sort of deprivation. So for the most part, we do not feel deprived. As a matter of fact, here on our house,
for the most part, I'd say almost.
Well,
like,
seldom do we feel deprived. We make decisions not to do things at certain times, and sometimes at the moment it may feel like we're deprived, but in hindsight, 99% of the time that wasn't something. I'm glad I didn't pay the $5 to climb the clock tower in
Prague.
Strigenhagen. So I don't know, but so it's making decisions that make sense for us without the budget. Unfortunately, here, without having this controlled life, it's way too easy to make decisions that are poor if you're looking to spend a certain amount of money in a given time frame. And so without this control in our life, we just don't spend as wisely as we do when we're at home, because there are too many unknowns.
That's right. And the number that I'm trying to hit for our whole 9 weeks, from the moment we left the house until the moment we get back, I'm trying to come in under $4,500 for the two of us for 9 weeks. I mean, $2,200 for 9 weeks in Europe. I mean, our airfare alone was actually more than that. Our individual tickets cost more than that. So fortunately, Tim travel hacked a lot of our hotels and our airfare, and some of a lot of other things actually. But so and not only that, here's the kind of cool thing, is if we were to like rent out our home and get rid of our life back in Colorado, we're actually living cheaper here than we do at home, because we have health insurance and car insurance and house insurance and a health club and all of the things, and we buy stuff and whatever, like we have a car and maintenance. And so we are like realizing, oh, if we are at $4,500, that means that life on the road is cheaper than life at home. And then that sets up interesting conversations when our daughter graduates next year. So let's see, because we're really interested in what that means. So do you have anything else to add?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, so in our early videos when we talked about how we retired in our 40s, so we mentioned that we don't have a budget. And so I think that this trip is indicative of why you may want to have a budget, or why anybody might want to have a budget in their life. And so
kind of to corral things.
That's right. So when you are trying to figure out a new situation, if you move to another state, or you're in a situation that has a bunch of unknown cost, a budget is an amazing way to sort of get things in control. And so from a spending standpoint, and so for us, we found that since we implemented this budget since Munich, our spending is right where we want it to be. And so before, we were spending more than we wanted it, what
like
we really
more than
wanted.
double, actually.
Yep.
Like
So,
almost. And again, we're spending like maybe $70 a day.
so when we say, and by the way, when we talk about out of control spending,
for us,
it's out of control spending.
Like I said, most other people would be most other like not complete super frugal people would be like, those people are crazy and super frugal. We get it.
Yeah. As a matter of fact, I think even when we were in the early phase of the trip, we thought we were doing it right. We were going to the grocery store and buying breakfast and things like this. So
and we did a lot. I mean,
yeah.
So we could have easily
even
been spending.
Even when you think you're doing it right, if you're in a new environment and you have a bunch of costs that you're not used to, it's very easy to spend more than you really want to spend.
Yeah. So I see that we're getting to the 10-minute mark. We always try to get under that. So tomorrow, I'm not sure what we're talking about, but we're going to be addressing something tomorrow, and I hope that you'll tune in. It'll be a mystery to us all.
That's right.
Thanks for watching. Where did Georgie?